this short video training module on how to grow a global consulting firm. Lots of people have emailed us and asked questions about how you can more effectively or efficiently grow a global team, especially if you're a small to mid-sized consulting firm or you're within a new consulting service line within a larger consulting firm. You're trying to grow your team globally. And there's several tactics, methods, and best practices that I've picked up by going to seminars and running consulting firms myself and working at consulting firms. So I just want to share kind of a bullet point list of different tips and things and insights that I have on this specific topic. The first thing is to realize that it's important to consider having a global consulting team, because nowadays companies large and small are very global in nature. It used to be more 10, 15 years ago that global companies were publicly traded companies. Global companies were multi-billion-dollar companies, or at least $100 million plus companies. Nowadays, lots of companies with under $1 million in revenue are also global. So that means no matter what size of client you have, it could be an additional value add that you have global resources at your fingertips. One thing I've found is that if a company does have over $100 million in revenue, they always have international business going on. I've hardly ever, I can't think of a single case where I've met a CEO of a company of over $100 million that didn't have global operations going. So it's important to not underestimate the importance of this, because if their operations are global and your consulting firms are not, they might think you only have a silo perspective of their industry. They might think you don't understand the cultural differences or the product or service delivery differences globally. And depending on what area you consult in, if it's a US-based compliance consulting project, maybe it doesn't matter because they're just hiring for you for this US-based project. But if you're in project management, HR, process improvement, supply chain management, management consulting, then it could be very important to have a globally relevant consulting offering. Another way that this comes into new business is completing RFPs. Lots of times there might not be specific questions about where all your offices are, but sometimes there will be. And if they don't ask that in the RFP, you could include details about how your consulting business may be based in Austin, Texas, but you have professionals on your team based in London, South Africa, Geneva, Luxembourg, and Moscow, etc. So try to figure out where the top hubs are for your type of consulting niche. It could be Singapore, Beijing, London, Moscow, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Mexico City, New York. Try to figure out where those top 5 to 7 kind of cities are that attract a lot of people that are within the industry that you consult in. So if you consult in the technology industry, that's going to be totally different than if you consult like in the healthcare industry, which is much more diverse. So look at your consulting client avatar, look at your industry, and figure out what international cities are going to be most important, and try to seek out professionals in those cities. That brings us to our next point, which is if you're hiring people globally, it can be very expensive. You do not have to have global offices set up. You can have people working out of home offices or virtual offices. A virtual office is where you pay $300, $500, $700 a month and you're sharing office space with other people. You still have meeting rooms, you still have a place to meet with clients, you still have a desk to work at some of the time, and it's definitely an option to keep costs low. Another option is having somebody work at home and getting a P.O. box address, so at least things can be shipped to that business address in those other cities, and it looks like a professional business address and not somebody's home address in case somebody Google Maps your office. Another tip is that if you're having a hard time attracting talent in those cities, there's 2 ways, kind of shortcuts to finding talent in other cities in your niche. The first shortcut is to look at universities based in those cities. Oftentimes professors, only work 15 hours to 30 hours a week in their professor roles, and they like to work on consulting projects. It's something they can do to keep relevant in the field and make more money and kind of leverage all of their expertise and perspective. And what you can do is approach those professors who teach courses or lead degree programs on your area of consulting, meet with them face-to-face, and maybe after meeting just once or twice face-to-face, they could be an ongoing consultant for your organization. If you don't use them for 6 months or a year at a time, pay for a couple hours of their time, just get more advice on how you could expand that business line, and that way you keep in touch and you keep your firm kind of globally relevant. Another tip related to that is to use websites like guru.com and elance.com. I've used Elance extensively, and we've been able to build a global team ourselves through using websites like this, as well as through using universities. And it's allowed us to access experts not only globally very quickly, but since they're on those websites as contractors and consultants, it allows you to keep your costs lower. They're expected to have their own computer equipment, their own office space. You're just paying them on an hourly basis for their work. And as long as you're paying them enough to keep them associated with you, then it can give your consulting firm a global scale. And that way, if you get a big consulting project, you can easily fulfill the needs of that new potential client, or at least have some resources ready to go and in place who are familiar with your service offering. Another tip most people don't think about is having access to professional business translators for the major languages that are important to your consulting client avatar or to your marketplace. So for example, if you're in the technology industry, maybe you have professional Chinese translators or translators you can work with in Hong Kong or Singapore or Tokyo, as well as maybe some key markets in Europe and the United States. That can be really important. It can be something that other firms don't have in place. If you have a great relationship, a good understanding with a few professional business translators, that's something you can stress within your RFP, that you can quickly operate within those cultures, and they can translators can sometimes act as cultural advisors in a way as well. And that can be something that can be easily overlooked until you need the translator, and then you have to start that learning process, how to find one, how do you know which one is worth hiring or not, etc. Another tip here is that when you're growing a global team, it's not easy to have professional photos of each team member on your website, but it is critical. People need to connect with who your team is, what they look like, do they look respectable and credible, what does their bio look like, and you have to get that all to come together in a professional way, even though they're not all based in the same location. And I found the easiest way is to have requirements for bio pictures for your team similar to passport picture requirements. Have them wear a certain exact type of clothes, have a white background, have it be 3 inches by 3 inches, have your web designer make sure all the images are the exact same color and size. Typically black and white looks the most professional, especially if some of the photos don't look 100% professional. You can make them more professional by making them black and white. This is really important, and it's definitely a challenge for small to mid-sized consulting firms that I've worked with that are global. I've had a hard time sometimes with this. It's just another small detail that can be overlooked, but it's important for marketing purposes. The last tip here is to pay attention to the travel time involved in projects. If you're going to be doing consulting globally, be preemptive and write into your standard contracts that not only do you need to be reimbursed for your travel expenses, but you also charge 1/4 time for travel time. If you're a very busy consultant and you don't like to travel much, you like using web video or web conferencing, then charge 1/3 time or 1/2 time. And if people say, oh wow, that's expensive, then say, yes, our time is valuable, but we can provide web conferencing video for free, or web conferencing video equipment costs less than $100, and we can save you $20,000, $30,000 of our time just by doing this web conferencing most of the time and just meeting in person when it's critical. That tip alone can save you thousands of dollars as a consultant. I know many consultants that didn't have that written into their contract for 10, 15 years of their career. So for 10 or 15 years, people are asking them to travel at times when it wasn't necessarily needed. For 10 or 15 years, people are asking them to travel and they could have done something over a web video conference. Or people are asking them to travel and not respecting their time and just paying the $300 plane ticket, but maybe it took 8 hours of their time each way that was lost, and they could use that time to relax and recover from work or to charge other clients for their time. So it's really important to include travel time charges into your contract up front so that you can have a good working relationship with your client and not be taken advantage of in that way. So I hope you enjoyed these tips on growing a global consulting team. These are things I've kind of picked up slowly along the way, and I don't see mentioned in too many consulting best practices books, so I thought they'd be important to emphasize here. So thank you for joining us today. This is businesstraining.com, where you can earn master's level qualifications to help you make more money.